Would you rather have useful knowledge, skills, or talents, or knowledge, skills, or talents that are useless? You're probably thinking the answer is obviously the former. Of course, having anything that's useful trumps having anything that's useless, right? If it's useless, it has no point. Why would you pick that? Well, in this video, while showing you footage from my latest full-body gym workout, I'm going to argue why useless skills, knowledge, and talent are superior and more worth having than useful ones. Yep, you heard that right. More specifically, I'm going to zoom in on the prospect of building muscle with the intention of becoming muscular, discern if it's a useful or useless endeavor, and discuss why it is or is not worth pursuing. Before we get started, if you find this video to be helpful or interesting, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. Okay, let's dive in. Although it might be self-explanatory and obvious, I think the best place to start is to define useful versus useless. Something useful leads to an end that brings about some kind of obvious productive outcome. For example, a hammer is useful because it can be directly used to hit nails into wood for the purpose of building things, like houses or commercial buildings. Is that a productive outcome? Absolutely. Marketing is an example of a useful skill because it can be directly used to promote a business, which would lead to the potential accumulation of revenue for that business. Another productive outcome? Definitely. Something useless, on the other hand, doesn't pose to have an obvious productive outcome. It's something that's had purely for the sake of having in itself. An example might be something like playing a musical instrument, for anyone who isn't a professional musician making an income from it, that is. A musical instrument is played as a hobby for its own sake, without any obvious productive outcome. Another example might be philosophy or having philosophical knowledge. Having that kind of knowledge is fruitful in that it will enrich your mind and way of thinking, but it doesn't in itself lead to any direct productive outcome. Bringing up these two examples, playing music and having philosophical knowledge, and claiming that they're useless will either be leading you to nod your head in agreement with me, or to squint your eyes a bit and think to yourself, no, I don't think you're right about that. In either case, hold your thought because I'm going to come back to them. First, though, let's now make an attempt at discerning if building muscle to become muscular is a useful or useless endeavor. What does being muscular entail? Well, it means being strong. It means having a particular aesthetic quality, one which many might consider to be visually commanding or attractive. It means being physically healthy on many different levels, and it means simply being physically capable. Now, those are all great benefits. Some might even call them invaluable, definitely. But do they mean that being muscular is useful? Well, now, in our modern world, it would actually be rightfully argued that it isn't, at least not the way that a hammer is useful or that being skilled at marketing is useful. Being muscular, unless you directly make your income as a bodybuilder or use it as a means of marketing for some kind of fitness service or product, is useless in the way I defined it earlier. It doesn't lead to any direct, obvious, productive outcome. Is it good? Absolutely. But is it useful? No, at least not directly. Let's go back to the examples I used earlier. Being skilled at a musical instrument and having philosophical knowledge, both of which I argued are useless. Now, despite not being useful in that they don't lead to any obvious productive outcome, you would consider them good, wouldn't you? Like they are worth having, doing, or being. I would say yes. And it's the reason behind the yes that makes them more worth having than anything that's useful. So, what is or are the reasons? Well, let's start with being a skilled musician or being skilled at playing a musical instrument. On the more obvious level, playing an instrument involves the experience of enjoyment. For those who do it, they often experience joy from it and can use it as a means of focusing or amplifying their emotions or the emotions of others to better understand emotion and feeling. It can be used as a means of developing an understanding of humanity to an incredibly deep level. That in itself is worth doing and having, just for the sake of doing and having it in itself. Am I right? On top of that, you can think of the process of becoming a skilled musician itself, the process of practicing to become skilled. That entails having discipline, willpower, being observant, having fine motor skill, being consistent, being intentional, and so on. In essence, it means developing a whole plethora of other broad and ultra-specific skills. Many of those skills could be considered a mix of either being useful or useless, and can be used indirectly or directly for any other endeavor you choose to pursue. Having discipline and willpower, for example, is helpful for pursuing anything that's remotely a challenge, either useful or useless, like getting good at a sport, becoming a good writer, being a successful business person, becoming a skilled sculptor, you name it. Although the skill of playing the musical instrument itself might not lead to an obvious productive outcome, again, unless you're a professional making an income from it, all of the combined broad and specific skills involved in becoming skilled at a musical instrument can be useful for other things. The same is true in regard to the philosophical knowledge example I used earlier as well. Having a well-informed understanding of the logic of Plato and Aristotle might not lead to an obvious productive outcome in itself, but simply through being able to think like them, or at least understand how they think, might lead you to learn, communicate, problem solve, and find meaning in your life in ways that you otherwise wouldn't have the capacity for. All of that in itself is invaluable, isn't it? It makes pursuing philosophical knowledge truly worth attaining. On a personal note, the former example of becoming skilled at a musical instrument is an example I intentionally use from my own background. Before becoming a fitness professional, I studied bass trombone orchestral performance in university for 7 years in an attempt to lead me to getting a career as an orchestral bass trombonist. Long story short, upon graduating with my post-undergraduate artist diploma, I took a complete 360 and changed my career to work in the fitness industry. I'll be honest with you. There were times after making that change that I initially questioned the point of the 7 years I spent studying music. The effort, the time, the money, the mental and emotional bandwidth. There were times where I questioned if it was all just a complete waste of time, thinking that becoming a good bass trombonist was useless. There was no point in doing it. It wasn't of any help to me. But as the years went by, I slowly realized how useful the uselessness of becoming a good bass trombonist actually was. It taught me all of the things I mentioned earlier: discipline, willpower, being observant, having some specific fine motor skills, being consistent, being intentional, and so on. And all of that has been helpful for everything I've pursued within fitness and outside of fitness. All of it. Not to mention, those are all qualities worth having purely for their own sake. Now I look back and think about how invaluable pursuing my studies in the useless endeavor of playing the bass trombone actually was, and how grateful I am for having done it. Okay, back to building muscle. It's useless. For anyone that's not a professional bodybuilder or fitness professional who makes their income off of having muscle, it doesn't lead to any obvious productive outcome. But similarly to my arguments for becoming skilled at a musical instrument or gaining philosophical knowledge, it, being a useless endeavor, is one of the things that is most worth doing. Being strong, capable, healthy, and upholding what might be considered a favorable aesthetic is worth having purely for the sake of itself. For its own sake, it's invaluable. Additionally, each of those qualities, like being strong, are ones that can be useful for other endeavors. Everything from working in construction or doing something as simple as picking up your kids from the ground. And lastly, you can think of the plethora of other skills that are developed in the pursuit of becoming muscular through the process of lifting weights and eating well. They're pretty similar as the ones that I mentioned being associated with becoming skilled at a musical instrument, aren't they? Having discipline, willpower, being observant, having some specific fine motor skills, being consistent, being intentional, and so on. All of those skills in themselves can be endlessly useful and are worth having purely for their own sake. And on that last personal side note, now you can really directly see how aiming to become skilled at the bass trombone was not at all pointless for me. Almost all of the skills I developed in doing so have been invaluable to me through my own journey of building muscle and ultimately pursuing my natural bodybuilding goals. But there you go. The endeavor of building muscle in an attempt to become muscular is useless. Just like becoming skilled at a musical instrument or developing philosophical knowledge is also useless. But it's the useless skills, bodies of knowledge, and talents that are most worth doing, having, or becoming. As such, the endeavor of becoming muscular, in addition to the other examples that I explored, are what I would argue to be invaluable and is more worth pursuing than what could be considered as being useful. This, by the way, is not a concept that I have come up with on my own. Definitely not. It's from St. John Henry Newman, who eloquently and extensively wrote on the topic, specifically revolving around the tension between useful and useless knowledge. At this point, I'd love to know your feedback. Do you agree or disagree with me? Let me know your thoughts and insights in the comment section below. Before this video comes to a close, I want to quickly let you know about the work that I do. When I'm not making YouTube videos or Instagram content, I work full-time as an online physique coach, where I help my clients to accomplish their muscle growth and fat loss goals by optimizing their approach to strength training and nutrition, and I coach them through the process. I've been doing this work for over 7 years and love helping my clients to not only transform their bodies, but ultimately their lives. If you've been considering getting some help with accomplishing your own physique goals, feel free to hit the link in the description below, where you can learn a little bit more about the work that I do and how I can help you. You can even use that link to schedule a free video consultation with me. If you have any questions about my coaching or how I can help you, just email me at sam@jadeathletics.ca. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.